what is a right teardrop for a left downwind? What is that?
Fly out 2 miles and descend as we come around, turn to the right. We'll be set up basically on a 45 to the left downwind for runway 16.
Right teardrop to the left downwind, legal or illegal? That's a big question. I've already made 2 videos on this subject. I've got an interview I'm going to include in this and a couple little excerpts here. The concept has to do with this new phenomenon that has come across in general aviation concerning doing a right descending teardrop turn into a downwind. So you're losing altitude and descending into oncoming traffic. I can tell you kind of where I think this came from. Let's take a look at the Sporty's video. I stole this from Sporty's. Here's their Sporty's guy telling you to enter the traffic pattern at a level altitude.
Always avoid descending entries into the traffic pattern because of collision hazards.
Now, to be fair, the Sporty's video also does include the maneuver that we're talking about here, a descending entry into the traffic pattern, but it's all predicated on going far enough away. I'm going to show you the flight aware track of an airplane that just crossed over my home airport. He crossed over from the north side to the south side, entered the downwind. His downwind leg was 1.8 nautical miles from the extended center line of the runway. So that means, really, if you're going to do this maneuver, you need to be about 4 nautical miles away. Let's read what the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge actually has to say about this. It says, entries into traffic patterns while descending create specific collision hazards and should be avoided. It also goes on to explain that you can cross over 500 feet above. That's good. If you want to do that, make sure that you cross 500 feet above. I don't like the 500 because that's where our turbine airplanes are as well. Let's cut to the chase. I included this video here. This is already a pre-recorded video with Brian Schiff. That's the son of Barry Schiff. A very interesting video, and I'll show that to you next year. In the studio today with Barry Schiff's son, Brian. You may remember the name Barry Schiff. Longtime writer, editor, pilot, guru. I grew up listening to the words of Barry Schiff, and his son Brian continues the Schiff legacy. Brian is a airline pilot for a major airline. He's also working with a group called NAFI, which is the National Association of Flight Instructors. Very involved in general aviation. So the concept, Brian and I had been going back and forth, chatting about and talking about this new concept, right teardrop to the left downwind, and where that came from. You know, I've been a CFI for 40 years. I'd never really heard of such a thing until just a few years ago, and it became prevalent. So let's bring Brian on the line here, and we're going to talk briefly about this and his take on it. So welcome, Brian. Thanks for jumping in here.
Hey, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there.
Good. Yeah, so your dad, we can talk all day about your dad, but
Yeah. I've learned a lot, just hanging around the man. You learn a lot simply by osmosis.
Yeah, and he did a lot with the, originally, we won't get into it, but he did a lot of articles and things on the thing called The Possible Turn, The Impossible Turn, and all that. He was kind of the front runner on that story, I guess, out of necessity. I think it actually happened to him a couple times, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it did. And it made him start studying it, especially because he was criticized for having done it. I don't think I'd be here today if he hadn't made the maneuver. At least that's how he tells it to me. But it caused him to really start studying the advice given to pilots about going straight ahead. But you're right. He kind of pioneered that study, and I've kind of picked up the reins from him on that recently.
Yeah, good. Well, to answer your initial question from a few days ago, are we doing better in general aviation? Yes, we are, and I'll put that graphic on the screen right now. I track these accidents as they occur. NTSB takes about 3 years to come up with some kind of a conclusion, but we don't really need to wait for the conclusion. The numbers are the numbers, and really the only thing I track is general aviation fatal accidents per year, and I'm trying to see that decline. Is it related to the number of hours that we're flying? Well, of course it is. But we don't have those numbers for 3 or 4 years after the fact either. So the best I can do in real time is how many airplanes are we bending every month? How many funerals are we having every month? Sure seems like it would be better if we had less funerals, and that's what I'm kind of driving at. The whole concept of mid-airs, near mid-airs, and mid-airs is on the forefront. I know you do a lot of work with Foreflight. I'm not really a Foreflight guy, but step me through this new concept. And I'm not. First of all, I want to make sure everybody's clear. I am a proponent of Foreflight. I think their product is absolutely fantastic. It's a necessity in the cockpit. Whoever designed that stuff is genius. I'm not a Foreflight guy, but it's not because I oppose anything that they're doing. It's just because I'm too old school and haven't really adapted to all that stuff. But the Foreflight came out with this thing, and they used a term that's typically reserved for the IFR world. What's the term that Foreflight came up with recently?
Well, I think you're referring to the teardrop. For lack of a better word, they use that to describe the entry to a pattern. It's also an entry to an instrument flying holding pattern, and that's how you and I grew up hearing about the word teardrop. Other than, maybe getting the bill after flying, I might have one right here. But generally speaking, we use the teardrop entry as a way of entering a holding pattern, but they referred to it as one of the entries that they show in the traffic pattern entry procedures. And I, like you, am a big proponent. Obviously, I do my Foreflight workshops. I try to teach this very wonderful app so people are learning it while I'm big plug foreflightworkshops.com. To teach this app. But yeah, it should be used as a crutch, not as a crutch. It should be used as a tool, not a crutch, a flight planning aid. And so this term that you're asking about is one of the pattern entries that is recommended to a VFR traffic pattern.
Yeah, and both you and your dad and me, we're probably a little bit old school compared to the rank and file newbie out there. Have you ever heard of the term children of the magenta line?
I have, and I think that term came from an instructor his first name was Van, and he was an instructor for American Airlines, and they put out some videos to their pilots called Children of the Magenta, and it was just about a hilarious but accurate portrayal of, hey, you're cleared for the visual approach, and the children of the Magenta, when cleared for visual, start typing on the FMS and following all the automation. So it's a great video series that can be found on YouTube about using the appropriate level of automation.
Right, but Children of the Magenta Line is kind of the direction that some of the younger millennials are going to. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I like the technology, and I do like a Magenta Line myself. However, in this particular instance, Foreflight, and I've seen it, I've got copies of it, Foreflight has drawn and labeled. It's not just a matter of semantics here. They've called this Teardrop to the Downwind. They've actually given it a name. The word teardrop is not anywhere in FAA, advisory circular, or aeronautical information. There is no word teardrop concerning the traffic pattern, and yet Foreflight has named it, therefore legitimizing the maneuver. And what it is a method of turning around to get on the downwind, but it's predicated on going out far enough away from the airport to commence the teardrop. So tell me what you know about the right teardrop to the left downwind.
Right, so they're depicting a way of crossing overhead midfield, making a turn back to come in on the 45 that appears like a teardrop, so they've called it that. And yeah, it's kind of become a term of art, and you and I both have been hearing it more on the radio, and I heard it too, and I'm like, what is that? It was probably around the time that you first reached out to me saying, hey, have you heard of this? And I'm like, no, I haven't. A teardrop to the downwind. It's kind of like, there are many things that we use, terms that we use in aviation, like, hey, make a right 270. I'm making a right 270 here, or a 360. They may not necessarily be in the pilot controller glossary, but we kind of all know what they are because they become a term of art. This is one I'd rather not see become a term of art in aviation, because I don't know what a teardrop to a downwind is. Plus, I think it involves too much turning. I'd rather see my students roll out every now and then and look for traffic, but get really far away from the airport and then come in on a 45 from that side. This kind of gives the impression, now it's just for planning, and again, I don't want to impress that pilots should be children of the magenta or the blue line or whatever color it is at that time, that you shouldn't be just following the line because it's there, but it's giving you an idea or a picture of what you're, basically just for situational awareness. But certainly the capability exists to take that route, plug it straight into your Garmin, and have your airplane on autopilot fly that line, where that could be drastic. These are not routes that have been vetted for terrain, airspace, or anything like that. It's just basically showing you a pictorial image of how you might want to enter the pattern. But I think, and I've talked to the folks at Foreflight, and I know that they've become aware of the issue and are probably going to correct it to make it appear to get further away from the airport. There are some airports, like I said, if you follow this line, you're going to hit a mountain or worse, and it kind of makes you turn, like you said. And I saw in one of your videos that airplanes who follow it to the T might be turning head on into the aircraft that are downwind, especially if they're kind of far out. So, the downwind can be a half a mile to a mile away from the airport. You need to be, in the airplane flying handbook says 2 miles from the downwind at a minimum. I'm happier with even more.
Yeah, and there's no place where the FAA ever clearly defines what is the downwind. Could be a half mile, could be a mile. I've seen some large, heavy corporate airplanes fly about 1.5 miles wide downwind at 1,500 AFE. So hard to tell, but generally avoiding head-on of the circular flow of the traffic pattern should be where we're going. If you really want to do this descending 30-degree bank, descending turn head-on into the traffic pattern, you got other airplanes that are probably going to be out there. And we ran into one just 48 hours ago, a Cessna doing a right descending turn onto the left downwind, put us windshield to windshield with the guy so close that I could see his teeth. And we didn't know he was there. Of course, I don't have an iPad or any kind of ADS-B information. I didn't know he was there. Obviously, he didn't know I was there, but I was the guy on the right. I was level at 1,000 feet on the downwind where I was supposed to be. He was descending, coming towards me. So the whole thing just, I think it needs some attention. It needs an advisory put on it. At least needs that magenta line moved out so that the children of the magenta line aren't blindly following.
Yeah, and I think, hey, we're doing it right here. We'll consider this a public service advisory to anybody watching that, hey, if you're going to look at a pattern entry like that on a Foreflight or any other app, there may be other apps doing something similar. I don't know. I can't pay attention to that many apps, but yeah, once you get to the pattern, okay, that's good for planning, but I'll grab my students' iPads and throw it in the back. You need to be out the window. You might not have seen the teeth on those pilots if you were busy looking at your iPad.
Right. No, we saw him first, wow. But the whole thing is just, it's definitely come around. It's not just a matter of semantics. Foreflight has given it a name. I think it's improper to call it Teardrop when there is no such thing as a teardrop, and I think it's improper to draw that magenta line spiraling and descending. And the Aeronautical Information Manual clearly says enter the traffic pattern level flight at 1,000 feet. I mean, that's
at pattern altitude. Yeah, the worst thing you can do is be descending while you're in the pattern or entering the pattern. You want to be at pattern altitude. And they also recommend they said the recommended entry is a 45-degree entry. So go get away from the airport on the downwind side, on the pattern side. Just go get away from the airport safely. And then just come in on a 45 and announce that you're entering on a 45. That's what I teach my students to do.
Or if you're coming in from the opposite side of the airport, stay level at 1,000 feet and enter on a 45. What difference does it make which side of the downwinds you're on when you enter at a 45? You can easily merge from either side of the airport. Just be at the correct altitude, the correct speed, and a nice, easy left-hand merging onto the downwind would help things out. But I think this needs a little bit of attention. I would hope that NAFI maybe could put out a bulletin or talk a little bit more about it. I'm hoping to get Foreflight to get involved in addressing this before we start seeing some mid-errors out there. I already know there's been a bunch of near misses off of this, and it's unfortunate. We don't need to be doing this.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, we're giving industry a wake-up call, and I'm sure that we are going to see some more and refining on this. The FAA doesn't regulate anything about traffic pattern entry. They have a couple suggestions. And I would go with what's safe because that's what prudent pilots should do, and it's what other pilots are expecting you to do. They only regulate the flow of traffic. And boy, if you turn upwind on the downwind leg, head on to other traffic, boy, that's a bad way to enter the flow of traffic.
Well, I'll differ with you on one point here, Brian. F8 does regulate this, and the regulation that I'll cite here, it says when in the vicinity of the traffic pattern, all turns shall be made to the left.
That's the flow. Yeah.
That's the flow.
They regulate that. They don't regulate how you get into those left
They
turns.
don't regulate how you get into it, but you're in clear violation. If you're making a descending right-hand turn into me on the downwind, that's an FAR bust.
I would agree with you on that. That's why you've got to get away from the pattern, away from the airport, so that you're making that right-hand turn not in the pattern, but away from the pattern. And they say minimum 2 miles away from the pattern. So that's why I say that.
I say you're guilty of careless and reckless and making a right-hand turn when it clearly says the rule is left-hand turns. That's not advisory. That's an actual regulation, and that's a bustable regulation that could be. You could not only bend metal, but you could also get a phone call over that in the future. So
Yeah, now with ADS-B, it's so simple to see who's doing it and who's not. I think everybody would be compelled to do it right.
I think we should be compelled to do it right and
Safely, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I appreciate you jumping here. I definitely want to give kudos to Foreflight for a fantastic product. I'm not jumping on their case for being bad guys because I think the whole thing is really good. Tell me the name of your workshop that you do, pilot. What is it?
Oh yeah, it's foreflightworkshops.com. We're just a bunch of guys showing how to use the program. Again, I'm not affiliated with Foreflight. I don't work for Foreflight. I don't receive any compensation from Foreflight. I'm just a gray-haired old man, been teaching for a long time like you, been doing things for a while and really become good at that app. And I teach it. So I use, on the first Monday of every month, we'll have a workshop 7 p.m. Central Time, and you can look more about that on foreflightworkshops.com.
I'll put that screen grab up there so people can know where to go. I appreciate you doing that. It is a fantastic deal there. So much information via your iPad. Technology has come so far on that, and it is absolutely fantastic for flight planning, weather, real time, everything. It's absolutely huge. But I'll get this video done, Brian. And I sure appreciate you visiting. I think it needs conversation. I
agree.
Open, frank. Let's talk about this and see if we can avoid running two airplanes together over something simple. I think there's a very simple fix to this that we can maybe urge Foreflight or somebody to take a look at.
I agree. They're looking at it now. I know that because I said, look, I'm going to start teaching this, and I just want you to be aware of a potential conflict here that could be misleading pilots if they're following it, if they're misusing the app and following the magenta line, as you say. But they're taking a look at that. Obviously, they're taking that very seriously.
Yeah, I think they are. I've seen it, and I hear it on the radio. I mean, I'm flying a lot right now in the traffic patterns. I hear it every day, 4 or 5 times. Right teardrop to the left downwind, and you look out, and there they are.
I've heard it myself. I've heard it recently as well. So it's making its way around, and I think this is a worthy conversation to tell everybody, no, there's no teardrop entry to the pattern. You need to go get away from the airport, come back in on a 45.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, brother, I appreciate it, and my best to your father and your family. I know you guys got a lot going on, but I'll get this posted and put up there, and maybe it'll spark some conversation someplace. And this is really the way I think in the industry we urge things to be fixed or massaged or changed, or enough people to start talking about it and provide some gentle hints on, hey, this might work out to be a problem here, boys.
Got to talk about it.
Got to talk about it.
Yep.
Yes, sir. All right. Have a great day, and thanks for jumping in here, Brian.
All right. You too. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. So you can come to your conclusion. Our next step is we're going to send a letter to Foreflight and just advise them that I think they've labeled this thing wrong. The label on this thing, right teardrop into the left downwind, they've made up a name. Remember, in the VFR world, in FAA, Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, or advisory circulars, the word teardrop is never used concerning traffic patterns. The word teardrop is an IFR term. When you use the word teardrop and make up a maneuver, I think we're opening up a whole lot of danger and potential liability. You've now drawn a magenta line. I want you to go back and look at the 2 videos that I made previously on this. Concerning that, I'll show you the screen grab for each one of them here. These are ride-along videos, but I got some graphics in here to show you what the problem is with making a right-hand descending turn into oncoming traffic in the traffic pattern. I'll put up video number 2 on this subject if we get any flicker from Foreflight, if they come back and announce an advisory, a warning label, a caution, or amend their naming of it, something. But you out there flying your little airplanes, if you're going to do this crazy maneuver, turning and descending into oncoming traffic, I think you should be a long ways away from the airport and be very vigilant. Descending onto other airplanes flying head-on is not a good idea. I'm going to get this video up and on the air for my tiny little itty-bitty fledgling YouTube channel, DanGryder. Probable cause.